Okay, I have begun recording this presentation. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. There's so many participants that makes me very happy. It means you all want to learn more about the college application process. I'm going to ask that if you have any questions throughout the duration of the presentation, that you just pop them in the chat for me. You can share them personally with me, or you can just share them with the whole group. That's entirely up to you. I do want to let you know, give me one second, I'm still admitting people. I do want to let you know that as it's recorded, it will be shared on our APO CCR website and under the college and career readiness link. So I will show you that at the end, okay? My name is Sarah Llewellyn. I have been an English teacher at Middletown High School for 17 years now. And during my time at Middletown High School, I have worked with college advisors and toured schools to learn more about the college application process. I have primarily worked with seniors, so I have seen many applications, many essays over the years. I attend different presentations throughout the summer to learn more about the process. And a few years ago, I developed the camp for Appoquinimink School District called Surviving the College Application Process. And I run that camp every summer with our seniors. Actually, this year I had 2 juniors too. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and begin as I'm admitting people. Okay, so I have linked everything here for the group, so you can click on the links later at a different time, and this presentation will be shared along with the actual recording of the presentation and me going over this so that you can use the links as needed. What we wanted to begin with was a timeline of how parents could assist their students in the process of applying to college. So your child might be a sophomore, junior, or senior, and this would still apply. You might just be ahead of the process if they're a sophomore or junior. And if they're a senior, you want to check these things off and make sure that they're working on this within the next week before August ends and before school begins. So my first recommendation for our seniors is that at this point in time, they have narrowed down a list of their colleges to at least 5 to 10 colleges. They don't want to have too many colleges because that can get a little overwhelming throughout the process. And then the decision process in terms of deciding which school to get in, to choose, that could also be a bit overwhelming. So we usually recommend about 5 to 10. You'll see I have links here to both the Common App and Coalition college applications. Common App is the most widely used college application from the for colleges. It's all over the country and international. Coalition is a new application. It has far less schools that apply there or use their application, mostly Southern schools, but Delaware schools are also on Coalition. At the end of this presentation, you'll see that I've linked a video I made last year that goes into the differences between Common App and Coalition and how to help your child through the process of applying to either one of them. Now, I also want to show you, you'll see here in the link, if you return to this later, if you choose narrowed list, this will take you to a set of directions for how to use our Zello app that all of our students in Appoquinimink School District have access to actually narrow down a list of schools and to generate a list of schools that meet their requirements. Maybe it's location, maybe it's cost, whatever it is, the Zello app will help with that. And I can pull that up at the end to show everyone. Okay, the next step that I'm suggesting is that your child chooses their school for early action or early decision if you're choosing to do that. That is not a requirement. All students can choose regular decision. Early action or early decision is a personal decision to make depending on the child. And I will go over the differences between those and recommendations for that later in the presentation. The next step is finishing your school tours. I recommend, and this is advice I've been given by college advisors, by admissions counselors, by our school counselors, is that whenever possible, a student should tour the school in person. First, if they tour in person or do a virtual tour, they can sign up for that tour, and then their name is actually on the list for touring the school. Why that's important is that that actually goes into their application, showing interest in the school. The more interest that they show in the school, the more likely that school is to then want to take them because it's a two-way street. When schools go through the application process and they decide who to take, They want to see students who are actively seeking them out as well, who will choose them on decision day in May. The next step, actually, hold on, I'm sorry. Let me go back here. I do want to point this out here. The link here to school tours is actually a link to UVisit, which will take them through virtual tours of many schools. I use this in my camp this year, and it's amazing. I really, really liked this website. It actually is like a real tour. So if you can't travel to a school, you can see much of the campus through this website, UVisit, and that's linked at the end in the resources as well. The next step is to schedule ACT and SAT as needed. All juniors took SAT in the spring through their school, an Appoquinimink school district, but the ACT is also something to consider. I will get into test optional schools later in the presentation as well. And then last for August is to start brainstorming responses to their essay prompts and deciding which of the prompts that they would like to answer. And again, I will also go over the essay later in the presentation. For September, the most important thing is to be meeting with their school counselor. Our seniors need to make sure that one, their schedule is accurate. Their schedule represents who they are. One of the most important things that I learned in working with admissions counselors and a college advisor in the last few years is that the way admissions look at classes like AP, dual enrollment, honors, and articulated courses is that they want to see how many of those courses, those kinds of courses, a district is offering, and then how many your child elected to take. So if our district offers over 50 AP, dual enrollment, and honors and articulated classes, and your child only takes one, admissions counselors are asking themselves, why only that one? So that's something to consider, that right now, if your child is taking an honors class, could they take a dual enrollment? Could they take an AP? Something to have a conversation with them about, and then they would have a conversation with their counselor about before drop add period ends. Next, your school counselor also will be able to provide the senior brag sheet, which helps them write their evaluations to your child's application. And they also can go over all graduation requirements, meaning, does your child have enough credits to graduate, have enough courses in the different areas, like for maths, for Englishes, etc. Next for September is requesting letters of recommendation. Now, this is actually something that's fallen off in the last few years. I find far more schools are no longer requiring letters of recommendation and have actually changed over to optional completely. So my recommendation for letters of recommendation is this. If your child needs only optional letters of recommendation, I would have them choose someone like their CTE teacher who sees them throughout the duration of their pathway and has seen them grow as a student, and then also will see their capstone project and WBL immersion experience in their senior year. They're the best choice for a letter of recommendation first. After that, it's maybe a teacher they've had multiple times, a teacher they had in their junior year who saw them throughout the duration of the entire class, etc. If your child has any required letters of recommendation, I would go with the CTE teacher first. If all the letters of recommendation are optional only in your child's applications, and they'll be able to go through that in the Common App and see that information for each school. If they're all optional, my recommendation is to send no more than one letter of recommendation. What that tells you is that the schools do not need the letters of recommendation anymore. And so they are not even going to check them. Right. Next, they want to make sure they're narrowing down their essay prompt and beginning to write the story. One of the biggest things that I see with our essays, our students are telling someone about something. They need to show the story, demonstrate the story. And so this should take time. Their essay should take time to build. And last, in September, I would like our students to revisit their extracurricular activities. You can see my note here says, if you've been involved in the same activities, try stepping up for a leadership position instead. So is there an opportunity to become a captain, to help the younger players, to volunteer with middle school teams that are starting to arrive now in our district? Can they explore an internship or employment through the WBL experience and put that in their application as well? During my camp, I highly recommend to all of my seniors that I highly recommend to all of our seniors that they actually put their capstone project and immersion experiences on their application under activities. This is an opportunity that the Appoquinimink School District offers to our students to participate in. And so it's very important for our students to also show their colleges that they have done that. This will make them stand out. If you have a child who's applying from CR and from Odessa High School, and their GPA is the same, their activities are the same, their class schedule is the same, everything's the same across the board, and their essays are good, great, okay? What will make them stand out is that immersion experience in their senior year, something that CR might not offer, or Christina, etc. Okay, but we offer it, and so it would be something that would make them stand out. October is college application month. I've linked the website here for you so you can revisit that and learn more about what that entails. Basically, our seniors will do a lot of work through their Compass class on this with their counselors. So there's not anything you need to do for this. It's something that the counselors will meet with students to do. My suggestion at this point in time is that you've narrowed your list down fully in October, because early action and early decision is due for a lot of schools on November 1st or 15th. You want to make sure that list is narrowed down fully by October. In October, the reminder here you can see here is that the application fee is waived for all Delaware schools. So if your child is applying to University of Delaware or Delaware State, they can put the fee waiver in to Common App, and that application will be free during October only. And then next, I am recommending that they visit a college fair in person or virtually. There are many virtual options out there, but remember that our actual college fair is on October 19th, and that's something that you could join your child in October. Okay, November, nothing new here with November. It's essentially just continuing to work on your applications, possibly submitting if they're doing early action or early decision. This is a big time for FAFSA and applying for scholarships and federal loans, state loans, etc. The FAFSA, sorry, site is extremely easy to use. It walks you through this information. It's important that you would obviously have your tax information with you, etc., so that way you can enter that and help your child enter that information. Paquinnamick does offer workshops for parents in, I think, September or October, and that will go out from each school. And then your child will also get a presentation during Compass in October that goes over how to fill this out. A big recommendation, I know it's not here on this, is that as your child applies, once their applications are done, they should heavily be relying on scholarships, and our counselors put those in Zello, and so your child has access to that in the Zello app as well. And my last note is, please reflect on your marking period 1 grades for your children, that they need to look at those grades and say, okay, is this the best I can do at this point in time? Can I step it up with this class? Do I need help with this class, etc.? All right, now I'm going to transition out of discussing the timeline, and I'm going to go through just a few notes on some topics that I found were really important to my students that attended the summer camp this year. This is something I went over with them, and then I've seen questions about from both my students throughout their senior year and from parents that reach out to me throughout the year and ask questions. So the first topic I'm going to go over is early action versus early decision. Now you can see the differences here on my screen. This is early action here. This is early decision. The main difference is that early action is not a requirement. It is not something where when a student fills out an early action application, they're tied to that application. However, early decision is a binding contract with that school. And then what that entails is this. It's pretty simple. If a child participates in early decision with their top school, and I recommend that it is their top school, a school that they absolutely more than any other school would like to attend. If they fill out that application as early decision and they are accepted by that school, the only out for that typically is if the school does not return a financial aid package that would help them actually go to that school. So if there's a financial reason a child cannot attend that school, then that's when they are released from the contract with the early decision school. So that is something to keep in mind. Early action, the only difference really with early action and regular decision is this: early action applications are just due earlier. There's no binding contract. It still would be a top school. They still go through decision day on May 1st. So there's really nothing that's like pro-con in terms of early action versus regular decision. My suggestion though is this: if your child has a top school and your school offers early action, I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback here. So please make sure that you're muted. Okay. Okay, so I'm sorry, with early action and early decision, the main difference here is this. Early action does not require our students to um, bind with that school and say, this is my top school, I'm only going here. They can still look at their regular decision applications. However, what it does is this. If you apply to University of Delaware as early action, it shows University of Delaware that they are your top choice, and that you are hoping to go there. And so by getting your application in earlier, you're not competing with all of the other applicants that they're going to see for regular decisions. So your application may stand out. Two, it shows that you are heavily interested in them. That's what schools want to see. It's a two-way street. Like I said earlier, they want to know that you want to go there, because the more students that they accept who will accept them on decision day, the happier the schools are. So early action, if you have that option, my suggestion is this. If early decision scares you because your child does not want to lock into that school too soon, then I would try to go with early action. If you can do early action with a top choice, do it. Again, there's no binding contract with that. The application just needs to be done sooner than January, which is when regular decision is due. Okay. And you can see my notes here. I already went over this a little bit, but when to apply early, these are my notes here. Only when your list is narrowed down, only when you know that that is the school that you want to go to. The top choice meets the most important factors, okay? While cost is the reason why students can get out of a binding early decision contract, cost should still be considered before applying early decision. My biggest one would be location, cost, and major. Obviously, your child does not want to go to a school that does not offer the major that they would like to study. And you want to make sure that cost and location, you can actually visit them, they can come home, etc. And then the student meets or better exceeds the application requirements. That's a really important note, that you will see that Zello and Parchment actually will show students if they can meet the requirements of a typical application that has been accepted by that school. And so they should be meeting GPA, course selection, test scores, etc. Okay, some pros and cons. The application is completed early, so that's kind of nice. It's done. They don't have to stress so much about it, leaving more space to enjoy their senior year. When all their friends are applying regular decision, they are done. And that way they can prepare more for their senior year, getting their capstone done, etc. For early decision, students will not get the opportunity to receive financial aid packages from all accepted schools. So this is important to keep in mind, that the acceptance letters for early decision will often arrive very close to the due date for the other applications. So my biggest recommendation here is that your child still sends out all of their applications. If they choose an early decision school, they still send out all regular decisions, because what will happen here is this. If your child only does their early decision school, they will not get it back in time, a decision back in time about whether or not they've been accepted before the regular decisions are due. So they should still send out all applications, even if they know that they're accepted and they're going to go to that school. And etc. Let me add to that. They may not receive the financial aid, but they should. A student in my camp did ask this year, that when your student gets their acceptance, they should also get the financial aid offering from that school at the same time. So they'll know whether or not they can afford to go there. However, if they don't get in, then they have the regular decision applications to rely on. And if they don't get the financial aid application that they need, then they'll be able to, again, rely on their regular decision applications. Okay, the next step is test optional schools. The biggest question I got from my camp this year was this. If a school says that they are test optional, does that actually mean they are test optional? Can they still reject a student for not sending their scores in? And so what I did was pull two quotes from University of Delaware and Towson University, two universities in our area, to show what they basically say about this. Essentially, this is what I will say about this in my reading. That if a test optional school says that they are test optional, then that means that they are not looking at scores and not relying on scores as part of a student's application. They're relying on course selection, they're relying on the essay, they're relying on the activities list, etc., but they're not relying on test scores. Now, the next step is, if you like your scores and you're looking at a test optional school, do you send your scores in? That's going to be up to you and your child to decide. If the scores are good and they meet the requirements of the application, even if they're not required to send in, I would still recommend sending them in. Again, if your child is happy with their scores, why not? Okay. Now there are some schools I will tell you that are test optional, or test like don't want test scores at all. Okay. So make sure that you check for the wording test optional, meaning they can send them, but they don't have to. Okay, and then the college essay. So this is my last step here, and then I will start to take questions. The college essay is arguably the most important aspect of the application. The reason for this is that this is what's going to make your child stand out. If all of our students are applying to a school from Appoquinimink School District, from across the 3 high schools in our district, and they have the same courses and they have the same scores and the same activities, the essay is what's going to actually make them stand out. Okay. And so in this case, I would make sure that they first determine what's missing from their application. In my camp each summer, I have my students go through everything before they actually get to the essay. I want to see a full activities list. I want to see what pathway they're in. I want to see essentially every aspect, because the thing that we need to look at is what part of who you are as a person is not being addressed by this application. Okay. Most of my students I found over the years try to write about an extracurricular activity. It's already in your activities list. Is there something else that could meet the essay prompts before you get to that sport or activity? Did you compete in some way? Is there something that is different about yours versus just being in that sport? So I would have them look at their entire application before choosing a prompt and choosing a topic. Make sure they're telling a story. The essay should not be talking about themselves. It should be a specific story that they are writing, a very short story, this moment in time. And then I would have them develop multiple stories, then later decide on which prompt they're answering. There's 2 tests with the essay in the Common App. The first is choosing the correct prompt with the topic that is being submitted for the essay. And then the second test is the essay itself. So my suggestion here is to have your student brainstorm some different stories, some different things about themselves that they want to showcase. I ask a series of questions in my camp about the student, things that they're into, things that are missing from their application, etc. And we talk about a few of those and then choose one that's missing from their actual application. They don't need to decide on the prompt first. Decide on the stories, then figure out which prompt you're answering. And why this is easy is that in the Common App, there are 2 prompts. The first and the last prompt are basically topic of your choice. So no matter what your child writes, they're still going to be able to submit it for the Common App under topic of your choice. If a school has an independent application, they're not in Common App, then more likely than not, if they actually require an essay, it's still going to be a topic of your choice. And last, if your child has a coalition essay, coalition is actually really interesting, and that students can submit a screencast in place of an essay. So they can actually record themselves telling the story if they'd like to. Why I point that out is this. You'll see in the next slide. Give me one second here. When I show you guys the resources, these 2 presentations are presentations I developed last summer. This one is fully on the essay itself. And then this one goes through the college application presentation, goes through the differences between Common App and Coalition. And then writing goes through all aspects of writing for your application, the essay, the supplemental writings, anything they need to write. That is in this presentation here. There's a video that walks you through. Why I'm pointing this out with the essay and watching this presentation is that University of Delaware is actually on both Common App and Coalition. And why that is helpful is that if your child would prefer to do a virtual essay, a screencast, rather than writing their essay for University of Delaware, which is oftentimes on a lot of our students' lists, they can do that under Coalition and fill out their application there. Now, before I take questions and I look at the chat, I'm just going to go through these resources for you. You'll get this presentation. What I'll do is share this in the chat at the end too, once I pause the recording, and it will also be posted on our AppOCCR website along with this video recording of the presentation. So the resources here, again, this is a presentation on Common App and Coalition and individual applications that I recorded last year. This second link is about all aspects of writing for the college application. This list here is actually how you as a parent can help your child in planning for the college application process. UVisit is the site that I went over earlier that takes you through virtual interactive tours of schools. There are many schools that are in there. Some are still not because it's still a newer website, but it's a very cool experience and I would definitely check it out. And the last link here is directions for generating a college list in Zello. So you'll see I took a couple of screenshots just to show you how to use Zello, or show your child how to use Zello to generate a college list if they have not yet done so. Okay, so I'm going to keep recording for the process of take me back up to the top here. I'm going to keep recording while I go through the questions. So if you can give me a minute to go through the chat and try to answer some of those questions, those who want to stay on at the end and have any more questions and want to come off mute, that's when I will go ahead and pause the recording and take those questions. So just give me a second here to go through. I got a question about FAFSA. Yes, it's not open till December, but that's the same every year. We go over it in October, and then we also do a parent workshop so that everyone is able to feel comfortable about filling it out before they actually get to it and before it's open. I got early decision, do not give out scholarship, unlike regular applications. Early decisions do not typically give out academic scholarships, but they may. And so that is something to consider, that they will give you back the financial aid packages with the acceptance, and then you can decide as a family whether or not that is enough to go to that school. Do they get the same amount of financial aid? That is actually a school counselor question in terms of applying to in-state versus out-of-state schools. I would tell you, I haven't heard a difference necessarily. Out-of-state schools do want out-of-state students. So they do want Delaware students. I can't speak specifically because financial aid is a very specific individual experience for each child. I got asked about another camp. We ran 3 weeks this year. We offered 3 weeks this year, and then we only ended up getting to run 1 because of signups. So it runs again next summer if we get enough students to sign up. And the camp is actually for juniors and seniors, okay, that I run. The financial aid package, again, this is a school counselor question. So I got asked about a breakdown of cost of attendance. The cost of it, it'll tell you the cost of the school, and it will tell you what the school is offering you as an academic scholarship, or offering your child as an academic scholarship. And when you fill out FAFSA, that's actually going to return the financial aid package from like the federal government, what kinds of loans or Pell Grants are being offered. But specific amounts, that's something you want to talk to your counselors about. And that's something I can't speak to until you individually fill out the financial package, essentially. So the FAFSA website is very individual. Like if I fill it out, I'm filling it out based on my tax return for my husband and myself. And so my numbers are going to look different than another family's numbers. In terms of essays, writing about telling a story versus speaking about a story, I have a lot of students who jump into an essay and just say, something like, 2 years ago, I experienced an injury. We'll talk about a sports injury, okay? 2 years ago, I was injured on the field hockey field. I tore my ACL, right? They're starting with I a lot. That's not the way you want to go. What you want to do is jump right into the story. When did they tear the ACL on the field hockey field? What was that moment like? What did it look like? What did it feel like? Could they take themselves back into that moment to open the essay? What's the website list out? State schools that offer Delaware residents and state tuition. I believe it's not, for programs, it's not offered at UD. That is a school counselor question. School counselors will provide that information to students throughout September and October in terms of their presentations that they give individually to students. But that is something I can look into and also post for you. And when we post this recording, I can try to get that question that answer for you. So it's for programs not offered at UD. Typically, what we're talking about here is if you have a child who is applying to a program that is not offered at any of our in-state schools, they can get reciprocal cost at out-of-state schools. So for instance, veterinary schools, dentistry, pharmacy, all of those programs are not offered at in-state schools in Delaware. And so if a student chose to go, for instance, to Rutgers or Towson or another school in New Jersey or Pennsylvania or Maryland, they can get in-state tuition for that. But again, that is something that I would recommend your child has a conversation directly with their school counselor when they meet with them at the beginning of the year. Okay. As For one, letters of recommendation. If a school only asks for one, should it be from the guidance counselor? All guidance counselors actually fill out an application. That's the senior brag sheet that your child will get in September. So that's separate. If they get a letter of recommendation and they only ask for one, my suggestion is from a CTE teacher first. And then after that, from somebody who can speak closely to your child in the classroom and what they've accomplished. The fee waivers, does that mean applying early decision? Yes. So the fee waiver, so let's say you were doing early decision at University of Delaware, the fee waiver will come out in October. And so that will be ahead of the November 1st or 15th deadline. So yes, that actually can work. Can the essay be about something that you discovered about yourself? Absolutely. Many of those prompts do lead into that. My suggestion again for this is if you have a specific moment here where you're saying, I discovered something about myself, what does that look like? What does that story look like? Then we figure out the prompt. Okay, go with that story first, then the prompt. Is there a web resource available for scholarships? Yes, our Zello website. All students have a ClassLink access, and then in there, the Zello app. The Zello app will house every scholarship that is offered, and our counselors update that consistently. So in there, they'll be able to go in there and see all the scholarships that are being offered and then talk to their school counselor about that process. The CTE teacher is their pathway teacher. Okay, so if your child is in allied health, then it might be their bio 110 or 120 teacher. If they're in engineering, okay, then it's their pathway teacher in that pathway. Okay, so I'm going back through the questions because I got that twice. Options for students that cannot apply to FAFSA. That is something you need to talk to your school counselor about. Okay, so I would recommend sending an email or having your child reach out in Schoology to their school counselor if they are worried that they will not be able to fill out FAFSA. Okay, if colleges that you are applying to have an application fee, how is that submitted? That's all through whatever the application is. So if it's in Common App, you fill it out in there. If it's Coalition, etc., you fill it out in the program itself. Everything is housed in that program. Letters of recommendation, test scores, everything is submitted through that application. Okay, are fee waivers only available for in-state tuition? Yes. Okay, so the fee waivers are part of the college application month, and it's just Delaware schools. Okay. Right. All right. So for everyone who is still on, are there any questions, any other questions for the chat, or does anybody want to come off mute and ask any questions? I'm going to end in the next 5 minutes. So I just want to give everybody a chance to ask any questions you may have. Do you want to come off mute? Yeah. Hi, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to verify the question I asked about the fee waivers. My question was more, if you apply for the Delaware school in October with the fee waiver, does that automatically make your application early decision, or you can apply as early? Okay.
Yes, you select. Yeah, a student will select early action, just like with their essay prompt, they have to select the prompt. They will have to select which application they're filling out. So even if they submitted in, November 3rd or something, it still can be regular decision.
I have a question. I rose my hand.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it was mentioned before, but I didn't hear it. Can you tell me what is the name of the list of state schools that offer Delaware residents state tuition? So like an example, if you wanted to go out of state, what are the other state schools that offer Delaware residents state tuition programs? Somebody asked
like
that
pharmacy, veterinary, yes. That is something that school counselors have to offer your child. So again, I would have your child reach out directly to their counselor, or you can email their counselor and say, my child is interested in this program. Can you tell me what schools will offer in-state tuition? They will have that information. Just like scholarship information, that's something that the school counselors only have.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great. Does anybody else want to come off mute or put something in the chat for me? In terms of other school resources for essay, I'm getting a couple of things in the chat. The Common App and Coalition, if you have questions about that, I'm going to suggest that you go to this link here. This is College Application Presentation. It takes you through Common App and Coalition and the differences between them. School resources for essay writing, I would highly recommend that you have your child speak to their English teacher possibly to look over their essay. Some English teachers in senior year will actually start the senior year by going over the essay and how to select a prompt. They can also talk to their school counselors about that as well. Okay, I got two hands.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
The college tours,
Yes.
most of them are during the school week. Is there any forgiveness for students if they go to college school tours, like as far as their absence?
Like if they sign up for a tour and then they don't go?
No, there's not for a tour. So my daughter's looking at college now that she wants to
Okay.
tour. Or only during school week. So that means she would have to take off school. Would there be any
Okay.
forgiveness from the school for absence, or does that?
That is
still be
something you
marked
actually have to
against
talk
her
to
as an
attendance about.
absence?
You have to talk to attendance about that, or honestly, I would talk to your
Okay.
your administrator. Yeah, I can't answer that for the school. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I had another one here. Any other questions? I thought I had somebody else come off. Early action only for one school. Early decision. I want to answer this real quick and then I'll come back to you. Early decision, only one school. Early action may be more than one. It just depends on the application. It will say it in there, but early decision is definitely only one school. Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question. Because you had mentioned putting the capstone project on their activities list.
Mhm.
When do they understand what that project will entail? Like, because that's a whole year-long project, right? Or...
Yes, they're going to learn about it in Compass and in their capstone course.
Mhm.
Almost every pathway now has a capstone course and a pathway teacher that will guide them through that. So
if
they'll
we
begin
already...
in September.
Okay,
And we
okay,
went
so by
over it. I'm
September-
actually our capstone facilitator for Middletown High School. We went over the
Okay.
capstone project. We introduced it to them in March, April, and May of last year at each of the schools. So they already have a little bit of information about it, but they will get a ton more along with actual help, guidance, you know, in their Compass class and their capstone course. And it just depends on the semester. Some of them are fall only, spring only.
Right, but if you're, that's what I mean. So if you're spring only, like, how do we know what to put as the activity list?
They can talk to their Compass teacher, is always the
Okay.
pathway teacher as well.
All right,
So they'll
thanks.
start with their Compass teacher in September.
Mhm.
I would have them have a conversation with them about what their immersion experience will look like, and then that's what they'll add
Okay.
to their application.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, anybody else want to come off mute? Because I'm going to go ahead and end the recording in just a minute. I got a couple of notes here about thank you guys for chiming in here. Middletown said college tours are excused. That makes sense to me. I mean, I don't see why not, right? So we're encouraging you to do them, right? So why wouldn't we excuse them? Okay. All right, I'm just gonna give them another minute. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.